The readings for today are from Marcus Aurelius. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. Today, I escaped anxiety, or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. I have power over my mind, not outside events. I realize this, and I find my greatest strength. Everything, a horse, a vine, is created for some duty. For what task then were you yourself created?
If my voice, it's possible that my voice will just stop. So if it does, my friend Craig has read my talk, and he will, wherever we happen to be, will come up and finish it. He may not use the same jokes as I would, but that's okay. There's lots of love in this room, and I see a number of old friends who I think some of you came because you heard this was my last talk, official talk, and so I appreciate you coming, and I'm glad that you're here. And this is a place of great love, and over the last 2+ years, I've gotten to know many of you, and have a strong, loving relationship with you, and I feel your love as well. So I'm very, very grateful for this community. Our topic is step into a new life. And of course, we're thinking about 2018. We're thinking about the new year. And I have a lot of things I want to share with you, some things that are important to me to share. And again, if we only do 5 minutes, then that means that's exactly how it's supposed to be. So that's okay. And I often, in my life, I often start a talk by saying life is a journey, life is a journey, life is a journey, because I think it absolutely is. And that's why your direction, can you hear me okay? Yes. That's why your direction is always more important than your destination, because your direction is about progress. And someone said that progress equals happiness, and I think that's absolutely true. And so in any situation, if we're growing and expanding and making progress, we often feel pretty good about what is happening, because progress has an aliveness to it. And we need that, otherwise we may become stale in our lives. One thing I certainly would want to ask you is, do you know what your purpose is? Because, we're talking about stepping into a new year. And so do you know why you came to the planet? Now, I know why I came to the planet. And sometimes I've wondered if I just made that up. And perhaps I did. And sometimes you do just make it up. But it's important to have some idea why you came to the planet. I know why I came, and I think that I'm finishing up some things I started a long, long time ago. And so I say that because that could be absolutely true of you, too. You came to the planet. The Bible calls it pitching your tent in the physical. So you pitched your tent in the physical. You came to this planet, and I can tell you right off, you came to make progress. You came to expand. You came to grow. And so you want to involve yourself in a way so that you're doing exactly that in the areas that you would choose to do that with. When I was just a little boy, about 5 years old, I told my mother, I want to be a holy man. And she said, oh, you want to be a minister? And I said, well, I actually want to be an Indian. And she said, oh, you have such an imagination. And I've thought a lot about being a holy man, because that's what the Lakota Sioux would call someone who basically would be doing what I'm doing right now. And at 5 years old, I knew I wanted to do that. I knew that. I felt it strongly. And then after I told her that, I probably in a short time grabbed a broomstick, went in and stood in front of the television and watched Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton, and I played my broomstick like a guitar. And so, see, those are two very important things to me right off at 5 years old. And I say that because, see, that's probably true of you too. Because often we know what's really important to us at 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. And sometimes we move ahead and we forget about that. So you want to know your purpose. It's a good idea to know your purpose, especially in 2018. This is a new year. And so you want to know what your purpose is. And if you wonder what it is, you might want to go back and visit some of those early times, because those early things could be happening and could make it quite clear what your purpose is all about. And so purpose is important. Progress is important. And more than that even, life is progress. Life is purpose, but life is also divinity. Life is divinity. And it's important to know that in our lives. You and I originated in a field of energy that had no boundaries whatsoever, pure positive energy. And we came from that energy into these physical bodies, into the tents that we live in. Western psychology has not accepted the idea of the Atman presence, the divinity within all people. But you and I don't need psychology to tell us that, because you and I know that there is a divinity about us. There's something eternal about us that goes beyond simply the physical body. And so life is about mysticism. I've always enjoyed psychology, but I've gone way beyond psychology at this point. And by that I mean I've entered into, and this has been true for a long time, what I would call mysticism. And as I thought about what I wanted to share with you on this day, I thought about Patanjali. Patanjali lived 2,300 years ago. Originally, Mary Pat introduced me to him. And he talked about purpose. And he talked about inspiration. And he talked about walking the spirit path in a very special way. He was considered a saint in his lifetime, teaching sutras. And a sutra is like a thread of essential philosophy. And it's important that we have an essential philosophy. It's important that we have a context that we operate out of. Otherwise, we're just floating around with the wind. And so we want to have some kind of philosophy that grounds us and yet connects us with the sky at the same time. And I find that in the writings of Patanjali. Of course, he taught meditation, he taught yoga, and he describes our ability to do miraculous things beyond what we might consider. And he talks about how those kinds of things can happen. There's one very popular quote, and you probably have heard this quote before, but I want to read it and I want to talk about it. Here's what he writes. When you are inspired by some great purpose, and that's your reason for being on the planet, some extraordinary project, when you plug into that high purpose, and then he begins to give a listing. He says, when you plug into that high purpose, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends all limitation. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. Dormant forces and faculties and talents become alive in you. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. That's a beautiful, beautiful writing. And so he speaks of being inspired. And his idea of inspired means to be in spirit. and to understand that Spirit is in us as well. And so he makes that observation about inspiration, and then he draws 6 conclusions. And I want to talk about those conclusions, and then I'll do my closing after that. And so here they are. These are the things I want you to especially pay attention to today. When you are in spirit, when you are inspired, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in prison or not. The truth is, I do know. The truth is, all of us have been in prison. All of us have been in prison, and we have been imprisoned by our thoughts more than anything else. So it's usually of our own making, but we are imprisoned because our thoughts contain us like a straitjacket. How many times have you been locked up because of certain thoughts that would come again and again and again? And so all of us have been imprisoned, and we're imprisoned by our thoughts, and sometimes we're imprisoned every single day by the same thoughts that come and visit us. We are even tortured by our thoughts. William Shakespeare said there is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. And so we get stuck in those thoughts, and we do it, and we don't remember yesterday I was stuck in the same thought. Last week I was stuck in the same thought. And so we don't remember that. And because of that, we just keep repeating the same thing again and again. There's a little insect called a processional caterpillar. And they have their name because of their distinctive behavior, because they move in a procession. They go out to get their food, usually at night, and one walks out, and then another one follows, another follows, and they follow in a processional line. It's like a little parade of caterpillars. And they travel head to tail and tail to head. And they're very interesting to watch. You know, animals are so interesting anyway. But as they travel, the one in the front lays down a little silk, and then the next one will follow that silk and the smell as well, because there's a scent involved. And then the second caterpillar will lay down his or her silk and continue. And they do that, and you could have hundreds of them walking through the forest looking probably for pine needles and such. One botanist, and botanists are cruel, mean people. I'm just joking about that, but a botanist took those little caterpillars and put them around the rim of a flower pot so that the entire rim was covered with caterpillars. And so you have all of these worms just going around and round and round and round. And then, because they are such cruel people, he took pine needles and put those inside the flower pot, so that they were only 8-10 inches away. But the little caterpillars continued to go in that circle. They didn't have the wisdom and the knowledge and the ability to actually get out of that worm circle. And so they just kept going and going and going. And I can't remember now, but I think it was somewhat like, it could have been 7 or 8 days. And at night it would be cold. And so he said some of them began to drop out because they were simply cold or maybe starving. And they circle that for 100 times, 200 times, 300 times, 500 times, 600 times. It would be the equivalent of us walking 100 miles. And so they just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. Now that would be called stuck. And that's exactly what happens often to us. And so a new year gives us an opportunity to think, oh, maybe I don't have to go around this same flower pot again and again. We don't follow silk threads. What we follow are thoughts. And we follow them again and again and again. And because of that, we end up reproducing and creating the same kinds of things over and over. And if we could just pull ourselves back and see those repetitive thoughts, we'd be shocked at how repetitive we can actually be and how we follow that parade all the time. It's our processional thoughts that create our future. It's our processional thoughts that's created our present. And it's our processional thoughts that help us determine what our past really looks like. And so when Patanjali talks about breaking all of those and moving beyond those, it's something that we really do want to pay attention to. Because living in a procession is counterproductive. It's not good for us. It's just not good. And so we want to set attention. We want to set our attention and intention so that we can begin to be free. And when we're caught up, he says, in spirit, when we are inspired by something beautiful, that's when we begin to break the bonds of those thoughts. And that's when we rise above those repetitive situations. So as you think about the next year, you probably don't want to just continue doing exactly the same thing, odds are. The second thing he mentions is, he says, when you're in spirit, your mind transcends limitation. Now, you and I know what limitations are. Limitations say, I can't do that. I know someone has done it, but I could never do it. I could never be that way. I could never create that kind of life. And so you and I know limitation. Limitations come in the form of beliefs. And a good definition of a belief is a sense of certainty. So we have a sense of certainty that we are limited in some way, and we often don't even consider going beyond it. Limitations block us from our dreams. And they create walls, and they keep us out. And sometimes they keep us in. And so the walls grow out of that, and they're tall and strong and steel-like. And they're created by this sense of certainty, these beliefs, these limitations that block us in. So he says we can transcend that. If you take the word transcend, trans means to go across or to go beyond. Send means to climb. So he says you can climb over those walls. You can climb over those limitations. And if you hear yourself say, well, I could never really do that, then you want to chuckle to yourself and realize that's a limitation. That's a sense of certainty. And once you spot it, you know what you can do about it. You know what you can do with it. And then you can enter into a creative space where you can create something that's brand new. All belief structures steal your thunder. They steal your power. They steal your lightning. And so a belief structure you want to be able to identify. And you can identify them by listening to yourself say, well, I could never do that. Well, I can't do that. Because that's how they're identified, by our languaging. And then number 3, he says when you're inspired, your consciousness expands in every direction. Now that's a weird thing. It's like a balloon. It expands in every direction. And it's good sometimes, you see, to spread out so that you can get a larger picture of what life is about. Imagine yourself living in a world that has absolutely no direction. Just play with that a bit. You probably don't even have to take anything or smoke anything to do it. You can just sit right there and do it. And so you imagine a world that has no direction, no north, east, west, south, no up or down, no past, no present. And so in that world, any direction is every direction. And divine beings live in that way. They live in a way so that everything is about expansion. So you own your own space. And the geography belongs to you. It's not that you're in a little corner and you say, this is my place. But when you live in a world like this, everything is your place. Everything is your place. Because there's no forbidden place. And you encompass everything, past, present, and forever. And nothing blocks you because you are a traveler. Sometimes we've talked about shamanic journeying. And so it means you shape shift. It means you heal. It means you create. And you do all of that in your imagination as you spread out. Now, let me give you an example. Suppose there's something you're wanting. It could be a man. It could be a woman. It could be money. It could be a job. It could be 1,000 things. But that thing that you're wanting is on the other side of the planet. And so you buy your Law of Attraction book so you can learn how to drag that thing on the other side of the earth to you, so that you can learn how to pull it to you, so you can learn how to attract it. And sometimes that works quite well, but there's another perspective. And that perspective, because I don't like the idea of dragging things. It takes a lot of energy to drag a horse a few miles. You don't want to do that. And or a motorcycle, whatever you happen to be wanting, I suppose. And so the idea of dragging it is hard. And so I take a piece of paper and I pour water on it, and I watch the water spread. I call it seeping. Water seep. That's what this is talking about. So whatever it is you're wanting in your imagination, you don't pull it and drag it to yourself. You close your eyes and you expand your consciousness. And so that as you do that, you begin to feel as if you are encompassing whatever it is you're wanting, even if it's 1,000 miles away, because your consciousness spreads. And when your consciousness spreads, whatever is within that domain has to come to you. And you don't have to drag it. You don't have to tie a rope around it. You just say, here it comes. And so it's a different way to approach it. And so it's looking at life in that your consciousness spreads. That means you use, of course, your imagination. In 2018, it's going to be, and it's probably always true, but it seems especially true to me, that you're going to need some room. You're going to need to make room. Jesus talked about wineskin, and Jesus in his day, they stored wine in leather wineskins and not in bottles like we would today. And so the animal skins were dried and cured until they could be shaped into a container, and then you would put the wine in that container. And when they were new, they were soft and pliable. And so you'd put the new wine in there, and the new wine in the fermentation process would give off gases, and it would cause the bag to swell. And Jesus said, you don't want to be putting new wine in old wineskins. And the reason is because they're no longer pliable. They're no longer soft. So if you put the new wine in the old wineskins, they're going to burst, and you're going to lose all the wine. And of course, he wasn't just a wino talking about wine, but Jesus was making the point and encouraging his followers to enlarge their vision, to expand. And he said, you can't really expand if you're going to keep holding on to the same belief, because it's just going to get rotten and dirty. It doesn't work well. You can't have a large life with restricted attitudes. And so if you're going to have a new life, you have to have a new container, a structure, a philosophy to put it in. And so you want that to be something that's large enough so that you can put it in there, and it's going to give you plenty of room. As I thought about this, I thought about great quotes from the past, my personal great quotes. And I remembered one, a friend of mine wrote about it. She wrote a book. But I once said something like, you don't have to remain in the box that you were shipped in. And that's a great quote. You don't have to remain in the box that you were shipped in. Or you can repot yourself. You can be a plant, and it's too tight. You need more room. And so in 2018, it's a time to plant seed. and allow that seed to grow and give it room to grow. And if you hear your little peepee voice saying something like, well, I could never do that, that could never really happen for me, you think, oh, limitation. I'm moving beyond those limitations now. I'm moving into something totally different. It may be that you've been sick for a long time, but now it could be a time to get well. It may be that you've been caught in addiction of some kind, but now it may be time for you to just be free of that. It may be that you've struggled financially for a while, but good is right there knocking on the door. And it's much closer than you think. Maybe you're looking for love in your life and you feel like you're missing something in that area. But it could be just right outside the door knocking, but you've got to make room. You've got to open up the closet, open up the room so the seeds will grow. It's all about perspective. In the Bible, 7 times it says this. What do you see? And so anytime you see something in some type of holy book, over and over and over, you want to pay attention. And so it says, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see? When you think about your life, what do you see? You see, that's important, because what you see is what you're going to get. What you see, you're going to move toward that. I was reading in a prophet, a Jewish prophet, and his name is Isaiah. And he said this, enlarge the place of your tent. Let the curtain of your habitation be stretched out. Spare not, lengthen the cord, and strengthen your stakes, because soon you will be bursting at the seams. And see, that's a good attitude. Enlarged, lengthened, stretched out. And so he's saying, make your tent large. Make it big, because a lot of good things are coming to you. Another prophet said, weeping may endure for the night, but joy is going to be coming in the morning. And it's a lot closer than you think. And I would suggest to you 2018 may be a great time. And so when you're taken over by a great inspiration, when you're taken over by something that's big and you begin to expand your consciousness, you'll begin to feel guided. The right people will come to you. The right people will walk right into your life. The right situations will come into your life. And it's all about expanding, because if someone walks into your life and it's the right person, but if you haven't expanded that in your consciousness first, you won't even recognize them. And so you want to expand your consciousness. And then number 4, he says, when you are inspired, you find yourself in a new and great and wonderful world. And all that means is that you're no longer living with the ego, edging God out. Now you're including God. You're including spirit. And that new world may feel the same, but it's not the same. It may look the same, but it's not the same. It may smell the same, but it's not the same. The world changes when you change. The world changes when you change. And it really does come down, more than anything else, to perspective. What do you see? I think of it as adventuring 2018. Adventuring. And any challenge that comes and knocks on your door, instead of saying, oh Lord, this is horrible, this is awful, because then the challenge is not going to be that happy to see you. And so you want to see this challenge is shaking me loose from my old paradigm. I have been living in these old wineskins for years, and now it broke. There's a hole in it. And then you start cursing the wineskin, but you don't want to do that. Instead, you want to realize this is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I haven't asked you to repeat anything, but I will, just one thing. And the statement is this: I'm not afraid of no change. I'm not afraid of no challenge. I'm not afraid of no challenge. Bring it in. And so when the knock comes at the door, it's going to be a great, great gift. And I know sometimes challenges at the micro level perspective can be scary as hell. And you start wringing your hands. You don't know what to do. But when we pull back and we get the larger view, we're not scared anymore. We're not scared anymore because we see the potential. It's a new world. If you want it to be. You've got that power. And statement 5, I think I have 6. He did. Statement 5 is this. When you're inspired, when you're in spirit, I like this one a lot. It says, when you are inspired, you have help. It says dormant forces, faculties, talents, entities become alive. And my take on that, it means the trees speak to you. It means that the stars sing to you. It means departed spirits may show up for a little visit and depart a little wisdom to you. It means all of us are multiple personalities. All of us are many, many different people. I don't mean in a unhealthy sense, but we all have all of these. We're a complex. And so when we begin to walk in spirit, all of these different personalities begin to give us wisdom if we just call on it. Wisdom, the point is you're not alone. Wisdom is pouring on you from every possible place. Now, if you're walking along thinking, I ain't got no wisdom, I don't know anything, I don't know what's going on, well, then that will be your experience. But if you say, I could use some Abraham Lincoln wisdom, Abe, come and share a bit with me, you'll be surprised at how wisdom is available to you, all kinds of wisdom at all times. The universe begins to collaborate with you. Jesus is the one that said, even the rocks will speak out and give me wisdom. The Bible says, and this is something I'm interested in because as a little boy I was, the Bible says, and you may well believe this, that there are angelic beings, there are beings that surround you, there are spiritual beings, and they're organized, listen to this part, they're organized to help you. They're organized to protect you. And the organization is important. If you spent any time in the Marines, you would know the rankings. You would know you have a private, and then you have a private first class, and then you have a lance corporal, and then you have a corporal, and then you have a sergeant, then you have maybe a gunnery sergeant, and then you have a staff sergeant, and they're ranked. And they're ranked in a certain way because they're organized to get the job done. And here's something I just love, the idea of, that spiritual beings are in rankings too. They're ranked. They're organized so they can get the job done. And if you were reading in the Bible, and also in Buddhism, in the Bible it says there are rulers, authorities, powers, thrones, principalities, and in the Greek, all of those are rankings. And so spiritual beings are organized. And the reason that is a powerful idea, because just thinking how much comfort that gave a little boy when he had been threatened that someone was going to kill him. He's in bed with a knife under his pillow, and he reads that verse. And that comfort was amazing, because he believed what he read, and he believed the whole spiritual kingdom was organized to protect him. And then he was able to go to sleep with no worries at all. And you can do the same thing, because if a 7-year-old can do that, then you, being you, certainly can do that. And so the point is, you have innumerable resources around you. Just call my name, and I'll be there. Just call my name, and I'll be there. And that is absolutely true. And the final statement is this. When you're in spirit, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. And so that's a beautiful thing. And of course, it's talking about identity. It's talking about getting a a glimpse of who you are. And all of that means you've got to march to the beat of your own drum. All of it means that you must operate independent of the good opinions of other people. Because if you're always checking in and doing a little test with everybody, well, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Maybe you go see a fortune teller and you say, let me give you some money. You tell me, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I'm not suggesting don't do any of that stuff. I'm not against anything, but I am for something. And what I'm for is you consulting yourself. You getting in touch with your intuition. And that's what all of these statements are talking about. Because when you do that, you have powerful medicine, and it's coming directly from inside of you. William Shakespeare said, to be or not to be, that is the question. And that's the question for you in 2018. Are you going to be or not? Are you going to do it or not? Are you going to be yourself or not? Are you going to repot yourself? You're going to remain in the box that you were shipped in. You've been in there for years. And it's really cramped at this point. And so, in that sense, you're making that kind of... and by the way, there's lots of well-meaning people that will tell you what you ought to do, what you ought to think, what you ought to say. Families are specialists in that, and they certainly will do that. But I'm encouraging you to march to the beat of your own drum. You and I came into the world from pure positive energy, and you came to have fun. You came to do something great. You came to do something big. And it's just right there on the other side of the veil. And all you have to do is say, oh, I can do that. I can become that. I can create anything. I can do anything like that. We arrive with nothing, and when we exit, we're not going to take anything. So this is the game right now. And what we're doing right now, today, and this coming year, I think of it like this. I think of you sitting on a throne, and you're sitting on this creative throne, and everything physical is spinning around you, and you're spinning your web. You're spinning your web. And what you want to do is make it beautiful. If the UPS man knocks on the door, and he says, oh, I brought you a tragedy here. You do your magic and you make it beautiful. Someone else says, I brought you this. You make it beautiful. You make it beautiful because that's what you came to do. That's your purpose. You're a holy man. You're a holy woman. That's what we do. And we make things like that into beauty. I am pleased that my voice just kept going. Thank you. And I think of my friend Karen. I know she's back there because I saw her earlier. And I think about this statement. It just occurred to me. Don't let your music die in you. And that's a great statement. She didn't. She let the music out. But all of us have that inside of us, and we don't want to die. We don't want to die with our music still in us. We don't want to die wondering. And so this is a great time to think about that. And so as you and I, on some glad morning, step to the other side, when we step to the other side, we want to say, no regret. Man, that was a hell of a ride. There were losses and there were wins, but that was an adventure. And I'm thankful for it. Let's turn within. As we turn within, I'm reminded of a poem that's credited to the Navajo people. And you know this poem, you'll recognize it because you sing it here. But it came from that direction, and it reads like this. Beauty is before me, and beauty is behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I'm surrounded by it. I'm immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it. And in my old age, I shall quietly walk the beautiful trail. In beauty it is begun, and in beauty it is ended. And of course, in their writing, when they talked about beauty, they were talking about what George Lucas would call the force, or what someone might call chi or prana. And so it surrounds us. We're immersed in it. And I like calling it beauty. I like calling it beauty. And so as we consider that, you and I have the amazing ability, because we're created in the image and likeness of God, which means that we are independent of circumstances. So that means we can tap into that beauty. We can tap into the chi. We can tap into the prana. We can tap into the love. We can call my name and I'll be there. You call the name love, it's there. You call the name courage, it's there. God, you are so powerful. All of you, I can feel that, because that's who you are. So you can just call it into existence. Call it into existence. And so stop pussyfooting around. Make it a wonderful year, a beautiful year, a year of beauty. I'm very thankful for all of you. And so it is. Since you're standing.